Hello, I'm Simon Calder. Welcome to today's Back to the City. Today I'm very excited and grateful to be joined by Carl Remus from Lucid Vanguard, just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time.
Before Carl and Bailey from Lucid Vanguard and 26 Bats leave Minneapolis temporarily. You'll be back though for your final show.
We'll be back for various shows throughout the years.
There was going to be one just before you left at the 7th Street entry on December 30th.
It's rescheduled to February 17th now.
And you happen to have to be back in town. So we get to celebrate you then.
Yeah, we'll be back soon enough.
Meanwhile, we're going to celebrate the most recent Lucid Vanguard record, My Autumn Blue. And I was back in Minneapolis just in time to be able to attend on your birthday the listening party of this. And it was beautiful. We were all just listening to the record in complete silence. And at the end, you asked if anyone had any questions. And of course I had a question.
I'm sure, yeah, I knew you would.
And the question, I noticed that there were a couple of moments where there were references to going in circles and infinity. And now, having listened to the record a lot, I know that those are in the title track, My Autumn Blue, and also Novelty Years. So a more refined version of my question back then. Now, let's zoom in on those couple of lyrics as a starting point. I'm breathing figure eights, a snake in spine, is the lyric in My Autumn Blue.
Yes.
And a snake in spine really intrigues me now too, because that makes me think of the chakras and like the Kundalini energy.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah? So I'd love for you to expand on I'm breathing figure eights, a snake in spine, and the other lyric that struck me at the listening party was in Novelty Years, the circle I'm running, or maybe the circles I'm running, but the circle I'm running is all figure eights.
Yeah.
So what's the significance of this figure eight motion, and how does it relate to the snake?
Yes, the snake and spine one from My Autumn Blue is referring more to, like the Kundalini and just how the breath is an infinite flow, going up and down and it never stops. I guess until you die, so it does, but within the lifetime, it's going. It's like the constant.
But the breath is like a microcosm of something bigger, perhaps, and that never ends.
Yeah, well, I think My Autumn Blue too is like very referential to like the seasons, and specifically fall, obviously, but the tail end of fall going into winter. Yeah. Which is very significant of death. So I can see like the cycle of like breathing in different parts of this album, but that song specifically is just that constant flow, but nearing kind of like a weaker breath. So, and I think in Novelty Years it's a little bit of a different take on that. It's more about behavioral patterns and going in circles and feeling like maybe you're on a treadmill and not really moving forward. Yeah, the vicious circle as opposed to a virtuous circle and being in the flow. Yes, but then I mean it is relating to that, even within that the breath is still always going. And it can change, well it does, like the pace at which we breathe. I know that you meditate, I meditate too, and when you are conscious of like really slowing down your breath, there's often a lot more clarity and just like neutral, just vision on life, I guess, like a clearer picture. But then when you are breathing really fast and you're stressed out and you're angry, it's like a good reflection of like where your mind's at, because it's often just like chaos and stress and, Absolutely, and tying these two things together, we can use conscious breathing to get to a point where we're more at peace with and just aware of what seems like a vicious circle and is otherwise is annoyingly a vicious circle.
that causes us to dislike ourselves or dislike or not be at peace with something. And I think Novelty Years in particular is such an interesting song to think about in that relation. The word acrasia is in the song. Oh, damn you, acrasia. I can't turn the page. Could you explain what acrasia is?
It's like the act of going against your better judgment, going against what you know is right, but still doing it.
Being torn, like going back to Plato.
Yeah.
Plato reflects on acrasia.
So yeah.
And for Plato, like if we know something, then if we have self-knowledge, then we can kind of escape from acrasia. At that moment in this song, you're saying, damn you, acrasia. This is an aspect of the human condition.
Yes.
Like, I'm not at peace in this moment, oh damn you, acrasia, with the fact that I'm stuck in these cycles. And there's the feeling of not being able to turn the page. Sonically though, I feel like it's so intentional, this record, and the instrumentation, you've got such a wonderful ensemble of people joining you at different moments and different songs, from Nelson Devereaux to Jeremy Ilvasaker, and such a wonderful cast of characters. Everyone is, the instrumentation is so intentional, and there are moments where there are very decisive shifts. Everyone turns the page together.
What I think is interesting about that song, Novelty Years in particular, is that it is about like the vicious cycle.
Sonically.
Yes, but just the act of writing that song alone gave me the ability to turn the page metaphorically on a lot of things, because it was a very therapeutic act to just like write about that condition.
Yeah, totally.
So to like look at it as like how I used it as like a process or a way to process things, way to process emotions or like other people's behaviors in my life and my own, and how a lot of it has been like harmful situations where it's what I'm talking about in the song. So it's cool that like when you're within the song and the lyrics, it's addressing the whirlwind of that when you're inside of those cycles, but then when you look at it from the outside, and it's it's cathartic, it's something healing. So it's like using that alchemy of what I always think songwriting has been for me, is like you're able to turn these whatever emotions, good, bad, everything in between, and you're able to process it into something else. So it's like I kind of see music as alchemy in that way. Music is really cool.
Music is alchemy in that way, and it's harnessed in that way here, allowing the discomforting thing to be, and the frustration with its perpetuation to be, creates the possibility of turning the page somehow.
Absolutely.
My favorite lyric actually in Novelty Years is "Crack a smile when I'm broken."
Yeah.
I think it's so clever that the crack in the brokenness.
In that lyric too, it's like, it always reminds me of that, how important humor is. Even like when you're in the most depressed states or having a hard time, it's like, for me, I always need some type of humor to just like, sometimes it's even like a way to fake it till you make it, to just like have a humorous interaction with somebody to just like initiate getting out of a dark place. Or like a dense place, and it just lightens the mood a little bit. So I feel like that's in that lyric. It's like kind of lighthearted, but it does have that depth to it.
Humor is a part of the human condition and part of healing, so important.
I think so.
Yeah. Another word that comes up not in this record, but in Lucid Vanguard songs is Eudaimonia. And which I was talking with Bailey about that in our most recent interview. But there's lots of different ways in which that word can be translated. I like how Elizabeth Gilbert, for her in Big Magic, Eudaimonia is about being well demoned. So for the ancients, rather than certain humans being geniuses, like we have genius, and if we kind of surrender and allow ourselves to like the flow, to be receptive to the flow of creativity, then we can access this. And it takes the pressure off, the ego, to be the genius. So that's one way of thinking about eudaimonia. I've always thought of it as like human flourishing, and I think humor is part of eudaimonia, is part of human flourishing. And so I love, are there other ways in which humor kind of works its way into this very serious, sometimes somber record, which is described on Bandcamp as upbeat melancholy?
Oh yeah. No, this is a very dense and darker record for me.
Yeah.
And it's there's one song, Nostalgic Miscellanea, that's just about a decade old. I wrote it a long time ago.
That's the closing song.
It is. So it's interesting to see one like that, which at the time it was like a way I was processing a big breakup in my life, romantic breakup. But like to look at it in a new light a decade later, and still how like parts of it are very applicable to like life, and how it like stood the test of time. Because there's songs I've written way back then in that same era. Eudaimonia also was from that era. But how some of them just got forgotten and I don't really care so much about them, but a few like have stuck around. I think it's really interesting like how they still resonate somehow.
I think it's really interesting that this song about nostalgia is the one that resonates still. You could be, so rather than kind of being nostalgic for the song about nostalgia, it resonates. There's a kind of presence to it.
Well, so it's almost like it was, that song for sure was definitely like, it was like I was recognizing like the future nostalgia I would have for that time frame. Like exactly what you're saying, like I will be like a couple decades further in my life and just think back upon that with like...
In the MCN6 TV studio. Reflecting on the song.
Yes, so yeah, that's a very special song to me.
That's one of my favorites too. Let's zoom in on that one.
Sure.
So it begins, welcome to the holy land of broken men and soulful chants. Let's sing the hymns of old romance. Romance. You have to not have an English accent for it to rhyme. Chants and romance and resurrect yesterday. Then it gets really interesting in a way that I think is very coherent with the rest of the record. So, open fire on the desolate, blank, quaint desire in my memory bank. There is an interesting relationship with desire and with like the emotions and affects there. I think it relates to what we were talking about with the vicious circle and aware of like certain patterning and wanting to repattern. Open fire on this desolate desire. So what's happening there? How does it relate to what we were talking about before? And there's so many references to feelings, emotions in the record. Here, what's the significance of open fire on the desolate blank quaint desire in my memory bank?
Yeah, I think that that gives me the imagery, or I always have, of like I'm like in this weird like nostalgic state of mind where it's like you have very fond memories of like past events, and often that the fondness of them or like the beauty of them overshadows like the darker parts that made things kind of go wrong and like led to like certain breakups or whatever. But I always imagined that like line like being just like openly firing like a gun, metaphorically or whatever, into this like abyss, and like trying to like not being able to grasp onto what you really want to. And I feel like that's what nostalgia really is. It's like you can never grasp back onto that like in a permanent way, like your brain or soul might want to. So I don't know, I think that's the best way I can verbalize how I think about that line.
When I first encountered the word eudaimonia, it was through the philosopher Martha Nussbaum, who's a favorite philosopher of mine. She has a book called The Therapy of Desire, which is about the Neo-Stoics and their understanding of the emotions, the role of the emotions in human life and cognition, the fact that the emotions are cognitions. that's what that book is about. But just the title of that book, The Therapy of Desire, and the fact that these philosophers were aware that it was their kind of their service.
Sure, yeah.
Through doing their work as philosophers was to provide a therapy for desire.
Yeah, like what I was saying earlier too.
You feel like music
songs,
is...
Music for sure. I think I've only been like very good at expressing myself and my emotions and processing emotions through music or song form.
Yeah.
And because it embodies like, words I think can only offer so much in expressing, at least for me.
Totally.
But when you put layers of any type of instrument or just sound to pair it with that and then offer like different emotional arcs within that,
yeah,
I think it's just a whole new realm that has infinite possibilities.
Definitely. Let's zoom in on The Pity Party, which was one of the singles in that respect, because I think at the end of that song, there's this kind of emotional release.
It's really chaotic and there's a huge build-up and then breaks.
Yes, exactly. So there's this really powerful guitar, like escalating kind of guitar part, and then it's more kind of staccato. Everything is more staccato.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think musically, something is happening that is a kind of commentary on or response to what's happening throughout the rest of the song lyrically. You know, we're stuck in our ways. We're at the pity party, defaulting to numb at one point, defaulting to drunk, stuck in these patterns. But then, like, the music leads us out of it, I think, or the music dramatizes something, a different possibility.
Absolutely. That's very reflective of how my life goes. The music helps lead me out of the pity party, exactly.
Yeah, but it's not I mean, if it's incongruous in this really kind of tasty way. It's not contradictory. The lyrics are serving an important function too, because we're holding it in place. There's the awareness, there's the acceptance of what the pattern is, and then the music is in the flow of this. It's well-demoned.
Yes, yes. Well, I like
the
that.
music is more well-demoned than just the words would be as poetry, and then so we just follow the flow of the music. Is that happening? I mean, I think that's happening all throughout the record. That was just one instance.
I think
Do you
so.
think that's happening at any other particular moments that you're especially, where you especially like what came out of working with this ensemble of musicians?
Well, I think to talk about some of the other characters that added sounds to this, I think this guy named Rich Hinman played pedal steel guitar on I think 5 of the songs, which is a very distinct sound. Once you hear it, you know what it is. Yeah. But I think that really added, how would I even describe it? Like, it's very ethereal. It kind of just floats over everything else that's going on. It's very airy at times. Yeah. But it's extremely emotional because it's like, with a pedal steel guitar, you're not really subscribing to like frets how you would, or like very linear notes as like a piano. So there's like, it's a slide, so you can go in between the notes, and I think it has like the ability to communicate like those in-betweens that you don't necessarily always get when you're just like playing notes on a piano, because it's like, this is A, this is B, this is C, you get like those microtonal things. Yeah. And I've been a very big fan of that instrument for a while. Yeah. And it was really cool that we could just get this guy on there. And he's like a session player in LA and New York and bounces around. So we kind of just did it all remotely. He would just send me stuff back.
I like how that works on Cowboy Town in particular.
Yeah, that one was especially airy because I left, I think that times there's like 3 different pedal steel takes going on at the exact same time. So it was interesting to see, like, instead of like just choosing certain parts and there only being one pedal steel thing happening, they would overlap in certain ways where they would be harmonious or there would be like little dissonance. But it just like lined up really perfectly to, I don't know, to the song. It just fell into place, you know.
The way in which you're describing the pedal steel there, it's almost like it reminds me of the circle I'm running is all figure eights. So we feel like we're stuck in the circle, but if it's like figure eights, there's something more liberating about doing the figure eight. It seems more like we're on the growth trajectory than just being stuck in a circle.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way in which you just described the pedal
steel.
Yeah, the pedal steel. It's almost like these moments of where we can kind of slide away from the momentum of the pattern, the established pattern. Yeah, there's something freeing about that.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point too about like just a circle and then a figure eight, because both are infinite, but figure eight too is like two circles. So like, yeah, I think that is a important thing to stress, is that like when you're in one circle, it often seems like you're not seeing the other side to it, which is like all of the human existence is like this duality and trying to like find the balance in between that.
Yeah.
So the figure eight definitely, I think, is like more symbolic of like going through the ringer and having a dark time, but then coming out on the top and it's like, oh, here's this breath of fresh air, and then back underwater. And so you're like getting both sides, whereas like only seeing one side of the circle is a whole nother experience.
Yeah. So when we're underwater, metaphorically, you know, that's when we need this too will pass, but also like when we feel like understood and seen, like this too will pass too.
This too shall pass.
And that's okay. That's the nature of you know, the human experience and growth. In Angelina, which is the opening track, it begins with the question, Angelina, where do you run off to today? And there's a lot of focus throughout the record on running away, leaving, finding oneself coming back, finding oneself coming back in a way that one didn't intend to, and then okay, this fits with the crazier and like, oh, I can't turn the page. But there are moments where there's a kind of like pleasant surprise to be back.
Yeah.
Could you expand a bit more on that?
I think, yeah, there's a lot of like running away for sure in this album, or just like
I want to flee in Coke and Caviar.
Yeah, just like want to get out of here and see something new, or whether that be like literally physically, like I'm about to do, go somewhere, or just like, you know, check out of a relationship and maybe come back in like 3 or 4 months and see what, you know, because I don't know, I think something that's really stuck with me in the last like 5 years of my life is that healing is not a linear process.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that I always have to keep coming back to that, because it's such a deceiving thing. Once you like get on this like momentum of like, you know, you think you're doing really good, you're having good time, good relationships, but inevitably something is gonna kind of throw that off kilter. But to remember that like all of your growth and healing in life up to that point doesn't just go away. It's still there. It's like this slow build of a foundation. So I think that's a big component to a lot of what you were just asking about in there, because it is like, some of it is like running away in cowardice, but also you inevitably have to come back to face these kind of things, one way or the other. Some of it's the
ebb and flow, and sometimes it's, you know, we can have compassion with ourselves. It's a, you know, necessary kind of moving away to, you know, be alone, have the self-care if you know, if it's a moving away from a person. And there's such a consistent celebration of the moment, like of sovereignty. That's a word, which is...
That's Cowboy Town, right?
Yeah. So let's
you know what, let me tell you something interesting about that song, because it's like, that song started all instrumental. Like I made it all the music first.
Okay, so there were no vocals, no lyrics.
And the first vocals I came up with and solidified was the very ending part where it does that big switch up.
Yeah. The focus on do-ride, do-ride.
Do-ride, run it through the moon. That was the first thing. And then it was kind of like I had chunks of like words and a melody up front for like those first like two things.
Yeah.
But it's very literal in the first like stanza and first verse of that song is like, I'm gonna dream out loud right now and just like talk about what I want to like manifest in my life.
Wingspan open.
Yeah.
Just before that.
Dream out loud. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of just became like, okay, I'm just gonna talk about what I want and not be too attached to these lyrics, because I just forced myself to finish those lyrics like right before I was kind of wrapping up that song and getting ready to send it off to mastering. So I was like, which is very different from all the other songs, because all the other songs were like, I spent a lot of time on all of the lyrics. And Cowboy Town is more just like this wandering, like, I guess it's like that cowboy fantasy, really, of just like go to the Wild West, you know, just like roam, be free, kind of energy.
Walking free and sovereignty.
Yep. So that's kind of how that song like really came together.
And then in terms of manifestation, gonna summon up a new high. That's in the lyrics that came first. And that's interesting to relate to opposite end of the spectrum, perhaps the first song that was written, Nostalgic Miscellanea, Lord, take me higher to this heavenly place where we still coexist. So there's this attempt to kind of, in that lyric it's interesting because we want to get to a new high, but the new high, we're nostalgic kind of for the old high too, where we still coexist. And I think we're navigating our way in this kind of beautiful way between those two different types of moment throughout the record. Why is the record called My Autumn Blue? Why is blue significant?
Well, I'm a Libra. I'm born in October, so autumn has always been like, you know, felt like the most comfortable and like best reflection of like who I am. I just like feel more at home in the fall. And then blue symbolizing, I guess, a couple things. Like I really was in love with blues music, or still am, like when I was younger, and that was kind of the foundation of how I started learning to play guitar, and just like how raw and visceral that music is.
Therapy of desire through blues music.
So it's like, and the autumn is just naturally like kind of melancholy. I think most people would agree. There's like a melancholy and also like kind of a nostalgic-y feeling to it. So when I wrote that line, My Autumn Blue, it kind of just like, it just stuck. I was like throwing things at the wall, and then, I don't know, it just resonated, and it felt like it kind of summed up like all of what was going on in the other songs too, in a way. So it kind of just worked as a title.
The very next phrase after My Autumn Blue in the song My Autumn Blue is inherent vice, which is interesting. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, I think that relates well to just like how fall works, just like the breaking down of life, not just physically, because you obviously have like the leaves and stuff, depending on where you are, but I'm from Minnesota, so we get that like very vibrant like destruction, and then
the decomposition.
Yeah, and then it kind of goes back, you know, the part of the cycle.